Welcome to the MAHA Media Hub. I'm Tony Lyons, president of MAHA Action. And just a few quick things that I want to say today. One of them is, Bobby Kennedy said this at the MAHA Summit, but, question everything. Be curious, open your mind to new ideas. That's what MAHA stands for. Make it easier to be healthy. Make it affordable to be healthy. Those are really critical things. We have to make it affordable. So we have to fight entrenched, corrupt practices, incentivize doctors to do a better job, lower drug prices, increase access to care, lower insurance premiums, use telemedicine, use technology, use everything we can to make it affordable for people to be healthy. And then, of course, address root causes. So we have an incredible lineup today. We have Dr. Oz coming on later. We have Russell Brand. We have Dr. Berg, Gary Brecka, Jeffrey Zakarian. And it's going to be a great lineup. And I hope you'll all stay till the end. And next up, we have Stephanie Carlton. And Stephanie is CMS Chief of Staff, Deputy Administrator. She's a healthcare leader with unique experience across all the dimensions of the U.S. healthcare economy. We're very, very happy to have her on here for the first time. So welcome, Stephanie.
Thanks, Tony. It's great to be with you today. Great to see a lot of new faces and familiar faces. A fun part of my job is getting to work with Dr. Oz every single day as we are running Medicare, Medicaid, and the exchanges for the American people. One of the things we found first day on the job here was how much all of our payment systems are oriented towards sick care. And we are waking up every day thinking about how can we orient those towards keeping people healthy. As an example, we figure out how we're going to measure quality in Medicare and Medicaid and the exchanges. And most of that is focused on once you make it to the doctor, how well is that doctor keeping your hemoglobin A1C controlled? It is not about helping you take better charge of your healthcare and focus on some of these foundational things like physical activity, walking every day, getting good nutrition without ultra-processed foods. And so we're waking up every day thinking about ways that we can reorient the payment system for literally half of Americans towards that. Some things we're doing are around changing the way we pay physicians. So it's not quite so focused on specialists, and it's more focused on primary care doctors, giving them time to really work with patients on some of those lifestyle changes that make an outsized impact on Americans' healthcare. We're also looking at some of the incentives we pay for dialysis as an example. And the way we pay is kind of condensed to 2 or 3 choices for Americans. And until they get sick and actually need to be on dialysis, we want to change that. So the incentives are not just about waiting till you need dialysis, but helping some of those upstream lifestyle changes that will prevent the need for you to ever be on dialysis. So those are the kinds of questions that we are asking every day here. There's another part of just the mindset here, which is taking on those special interests in Washington that are profiting from keeping you sick and reorienting it towards incentives that keep you healthy as Americans. Another example, this is something Dr. Oz took on a couple weeks ago that we announced, was around how we pay for the little tiny bandages. If you need a skin graft, as an example, we saw the fraud in that go from $1 billion to well over $20 billion a year. This is a good example of people profiting from you being sick because of the way that Washington paid those providers, as one example. Another good example of something we've been literally working on today at CMS is the Rural Health Transformation Fund. MAHA was a major component of that. There's literally a Make Rural America Healthy Again. And as we started working with the states on this, we started to see a lot of states say they want to get waivers in their food stamp programs so that they're getting out some of the junk food that American taxpayers subsidize every day. And we're seeing more and more states do that. So exciting day to be at CMS and working with Dr. Oz. Tony, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, thanks so much. So next up, we have Dr. Eric Berg. He's been on this show many, many times and, is a big really been a huge help to the MAHA movement. And, he's got 36 million subscribers on all platforms. He's known as the Knowledge Doc. He's revolutionized the way we all think about healthy eating, and is really working hard to help break, or fix the broken food pyramid and empower people to take control of their health, which means helping people make being healthy affordable. That's the key thing. We have to make it possible for people to be healthy. Great to have you on, Eric.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Tony. I wanted to, usually I talk about food and things, but I wanted to talk, one of the MAHA agenda things that we're working on is to make sure that we have safe and effective therapies and treatments and drugs, right? When we're doing research on all that. I want to share, today we're going to talk, both myself and Sarah are going to talk about the treatment that's literally still in existence. You're going to be kind of shocked about this treatment. You probably thought it was banned years ago with lobotomy, but it's not. It's still going on. And I'm talking about shock therapy, ECT, they call it. So I want to share some data with you because this is something that really needs to be banned, because the ECT has never undergone any legally required FDA approval process. ECT was grandfathered in 1976. And if any of you are curious about what I'm talking about ECT, I'm talking about putting high voltage into your brain to deal with certain types of ailments. So they're still doing it. So this was like in 1976, it was considered a high-risk class 3 device. But it's never been FDA approved. They grandfathered it. They cleared it without requiring any adequate or well-controlled clinical investigations, because Congress mandates anything for high-risk devices like class 3 that you have to go through clinical trials. Well, in 1979, the FDA ordered manufacturers to submit this approval data, and they gave them until 1982. They never did. The FDA never enforced the law. And in 1995, the FDA again instructing manufacturers to submit all the safety and efficacy data by 1997. Again, they refused. The FDA again did not enforce its own order. So there's a lot of corruption in this area. The other thing is no modern long-term placebo-controlled trials exist even after 80 years of use. I mean, that's just shocking. You also have industry and federal researchers discouraging clinical trials because of cost. So this blew me away as well. Conducting clinical trials for ECT might be too expensive for manufacturers. This is by an FDA official saying this. And this is some years ago. Thank goodness the FDA has changed right now. The co-owner of one of the companies that makes one of the units, Somatics, echoed that it couldn't afford necessary research. So here we have the only high-risk brain electrical device where industry openly admits that it won't do safety trials because they don't want to pay for them. Incredible. ECT was then downgraded to a lower risk class 2 device. Okay. Interesting. This puts the brain electrical seizure device into the same risk class as contact lenses and condoms. And I'm not making this up. So no long-term safety or efficacy studies. Over 55% of the patients experience permanent memory loss. 84% require ongoing maintenance ECT. Incredible. There's human rights issues. The United Nations Committee Against Torture has forced ECT. It constitutes torture under the Convention Against Torture. In 33 jurisdictions, patients can be subject to ECT involuntarily. So this is just over the top. When I heard this, I'm like, we have to do something about it. Veterans, over $70 million a year are spent on ECT, or actually between 2010 and 2019. Incredible. No veteran should receive a high-risk, unproven brain electrical procedure without evidence of, actual studies. So basically, the message is this shock therapy is not safe and effective. It needs to be banned. And there's a petition that we'll send out that we would really appreciate you signing to, if you agree with it being banned, you should sign it, and we'll send that out to an email. So that's how I want to cover this week, Tony. So thanks for letting me have the opportunity.
Great. Yeah, thanks for coming on. Such critical points that we need to, in all areas, do better science, be much more transparent, fight corruption, and just make it easier for people to be healthy. Make it easier, make it cheaper so that people have an incentive. So the next person we have on is Sayer G. He's a member of the Disinformation Dozen, as was Bobby Kennedy and many other sort of freedom fighters and health warriors. It's been an incredible badge of honor to be part of that group. And he's one of the toughest and most steadfast MAHA warriors who's been really great at putting progress into context. So great to have you on once again. Sayer, we can't hear you.
Thanks so much, Tony. The thing about MAHA that is so inspiring is that we are looking at root cause resolution of conditions that affect the majority of Americans today. And ECT is one of those interventions, and that's a euphemism, that is so disturbing that when you actually look at the mechanism of action, if you were to use the 450 volts, 800 to 900 milliamps in the heart, you need about 1/4 to 1/9 the dose in order to kill someone. So the fact that you're using a technology to essentially electrocute someone to induce a grand mal seizure is really quite barbaric and quite horrific. So when Dr. Berg and I went into this topic and we spoke with those who had actually experienced it, it was so disturbing because most of those who suffer this so-called intervention end up with permanent brain damage. And unfortunately, as we know through a lot of pharmaceutical interventions, sometimes the primary adverse effect is actually repackaged as the therapeutic effect. In other words, a drug could make you sleepy, right? Because it's damaging some part of your body. So we'll just, say that this is an insomnia medication. In this case, it is so egregious because essentially what we're dealing with here by the numbers, okay, is that there are 100,000 plus Americans that are electroshocked annually. Okay, we're not going to use the euphemism electroconvulsive therapy. It's similar to using the term immunization to imply that vaccination equates to bona fide immunity and is safe and effective. It's sort of a semantic trick. Essentially, what's happening today is children as young as 5 years of age are being given this so-called intervention. And keep in mind, the only difference between these devices being deployed for torture, which is actually happening in China, the same two manufacturers in the US that are selling these devices, for an industry that's about $500 million annually, up to $2,500 a so-called treatment. They're also selling those exact devices to China for torture. So if you remove informed choice, which is a huge theme that we've all experienced in the past 5 years, you're actually violating informed medical choice. And that's the case here because just like we learned with vaccines where the emperor wears no clothes, there are no saline placebo-controlled trials that are presently used to establish the safety and efficacy of our vaccine schedule. So we've learned a lot as a nation regarding the medical gaslighting that goes on. When you start to really understand what's happening with ECT, when relapse rates are 84%, for example, 40 plus years that the FDA has refused to certify safety, this is a low-hanging fruit. This is an example where if we use the gold standard science that, of course, RFK Jr. and the incredible leadership we have with HHS today is now, saying we are going to hold ourselves to this, standard. There's just no way that we can continue forward. So what is happening essentially is we have a broad-based campaign. It's a coalition, which includes a ton of people that are looking to help ban ECT and to contact our elected officials. You go to stopect.com. For those who weren't able to be on the live stream, there will be an email that is sent that will give you the details of how to take action. This is something that as a country, we need to stand up for the health and well-being of our especially vulnerable populations, our children, those who have serious, spiritual and so-called mental diseases that are being preyed upon through an industry that has never followed the most basic principles of informed medical consent. So thanks again, and thank you to the MAHA community for allowing this important advocacy to finally be spoken to.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Yeah, those are really critical points, and it's always great to have your perspective. Next up, we have Hillary Boynton, and she is the founder of the School of Lunch. She spent the last decade on the front lines of, making sure we have good food in schools, feeding children, K to 12, 10 months a year, and training people to really make this change and to get lunch training in every school in the country. We can do a much better job, and we hope that the work that she's doing is going to help that. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege to be here, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share our mission and our model. I'm Hillary Boynton. I'm a mother of 5. I'm the co-author of the Heal Your Gut cookbook and the founder of School of Lunch, where 10 months out of the year, like Tony said, we're feeding kids K through 12, the most nutrient-dense foods that we can find in our local food system and beyond. So what I mean by nutrient-dense foods are things like local, seasonal, organic fruits and vegetables, healthy saturated fats, lard, tallow, butter, ghee, meat stocks, bone broths, fermented foods, organ meats, slow roasted meats, full fat dairy, 100% whole grain sourdough bread, really the best of what we can find and what we can give these kids to nourish them on a daily basis. The other 2 months of the year, we are doing our School of Lunch training academies, where we'll train anyone and everybody who wants to learn how to live and thrive free of disease. So we're training from school chefs to administrators to parents, kids, thought leaders, change makers, registered dietitians, really anybody who wants this information. We'll give them our values and our systems and send them back into their communities to be the ripple. So whether they want to step into the work of changing school lunches, hospitals, churches, somewhere else in their communities, or simply take control of their family's health or their own health and be a model for a healthier path forward, that's our goal. Why this work matters. Obviously, all of us know that we're facing a chronic disease epidemic in our children, and most of our population is metabolically unhealthy. With school lunch, I believe, honestly, school lunch is the gateway to a healthier future for all of us. We're feeding 30 million school lunch meals every single day. So that is a massive opportunity to set kids up with a foundation of health and change the trajectory of their health. And why this matters. I mean, why this works. I know this works because, like Tony said, I've been on the front lines for 10 years. I'm literally the one who's down on my knees, looking these kids in the eyes, high-fiving them, encouraging them to try new things, hugging them, loving them, telling them the why we're feeding them these nutrient-dense foods to build their brains and build their bodies. And gifting them this feeling of what it feels like to feel good, right? Like most kids don't know what it feels like to feel good. And most adults don't know what it feels like to feel good. So when you have these kids and they're tuned in and tapped in and turned on and steady and satiated and focused and basically high on life from the foods you're feeding them, it's this really beautiful thing to witness. And it's this beautiful bottom-up approach where these kids are taking this information back into their homes and talking to their parents about their school lunch and saying, Mom, Dad, can you make bone broth and fermented foods and sourdough bread like Miss Hillary and the school chefs? And then we're bringing the parents into the school for parents at lunch once a month, and bringing in farmers and food purveyors that we support and connecting parents to their local food system, and giving them an opportunity to sit down and experience what their kids are experiencing on a daily basis, and they feel good. And then all of a sudden you have this united front at home and at school. The kids are getting a unified message. So we're working very hard. We know our model works, and we're working very hard with a small private school in Los Angeles, California, and we're taking our model and implementing it into a public school with a pilot program in Florida, where we believe that we can take our menus and implement it and show that this way of feeding kids is reversing and preventing chronic illness. We trained their food service director 2 years ago, and then this past summer we raised money to train 10 of their staff, including the head of school, assistant head of school, food service director, food manager, chefs, bakers, the gardener, the dishwasher, jack of all trades, and even the cashier. All of them have the value system. And so again, they're this united front to go back into the school and hold space for these kids. We worked very closely with Nina Teicholz. Her recommendations for the new dietary guidelines are very aligned. Our menus are very aligned with her recommendations. So she would run a clinical trial alongside of our pilot program to show again that this is the way forward for our children to have a healthy future and to reverse and prevent chronic disease. So we're super, super excited. I'm very, very grateful to be here and to have MAHA amplify our message and to help with the systems and scaling this. Obviously, it's a big undertaking with so many children across the country and so many school lunch programs and so many just reheat kitchens. We need scratch cooking kitchens and whatnot. So looking for the support of the whole MAHA community to just amplify this message and to know that to spread the message that there is a better path forward. I think a lot of people don't know that there is another way and we're not stuck. So anyway, thank you. I'm here to be of service in any way I can and excited to be a part of it all.
Great. Thanks so much for giving this critical message to all the people viewing this, that, nothing could be more important to making it easy and inexpensive for children to get access to healthy food, to live a healthy life. So it's really critical. Next up, we have Dr. Oz. He is the administrator of CMS, and he is in charge of coverage for 160 million people in this country with a budget of over $1 trillion. So, working just incredibly hard to shift the focus from treatment to prevention and from drugs to nutrition, but most importantly, to reduce the cost of being healthy, to reduce the cost of drugs so that people can afford to be healthy. So, cut down the cost of everything so that people can be healthy. Thanks so much, Dr. Oz.
Hey, Tony, thanks for the leadership you've given to this movement. And I do want to speak about the movement for a second. I think a lot of us believe there's an element to MAHA about going back to the roots of what's allowed humans to be healthy for so many millennia, right? When humans came out of Africa 70,000 years ago, there were realities of the environment around us that tended to feed into the biology, the mammalian biology of the human species. And it allowed us to be able to adapt to different environments. I always joke with my kids that the reason I have so much hair is because people who grew up in areas where there's a lot of malaria have a lot of hair in their bodies because mosquitoes hate hair. Plus, we can feel the mosquitoes earlier, and malaria is the number one killer of all time of humanity. So there is a benefit of the way I look because of where I grew up, and others have obviously to, almost trite to mention the differences that we can all observe externally, and there are ones on the inside as well. But when you rapidly change the dynamic of the external world's impact on your biology, you can't change that overnight. It is true that epigenetics are powerful. We have lots of evidence that if you feed a mother certain things, it'll affect her child, and that child will pass on those epigenetic changes to its child. That's, we have this evidence, by the way, from the Second World War when there was a famine in parts of Europe because of Nazi invasions. And when those mothers bore children, those children had hypertension and their children had hypertension because they ended up developing a thrifty genotype because of the stress they were feeling. So I'll go say, there's an important part of that dynamic of the MAHA movement. But there's also the issue of affordability. And if we define it as making it easy to be healthy, then we have to be able to deal with the reality that we made it hard to be healthy, both because you get sick eating the American diet, the standard American diet being sad as it is, but you also have developed sedentary lifestyles. We built challenges to basic sleep function, all the things we've talked about quite frequently. But if you happen to get illness, as Steph Carlton, who actually very modestly won't tell you this, but she ran this organization while I was going through Senate confirmation, and is a very popular chief of staff because she's been bringing MAHA into the system. And the reason that's important is because I want a lot of the folks who are part of this movement to understand you have to also get government to change. And government's a big ship and it moves slowly. But once it starts changing, it can actually go quite nicely in the right direction. And it moves a lot of heft with it because it is there's a lot of tonnage in government. So you have to be able to work within government in the areas that it can help. And, it can help in everything. but it can help in some areas, arguably better than anyone else can. And particularly in the issue of payment for medical services, we're the biggest payer. As Tony outlined, we're paying about $1.8 trillion a year. We cover 160 million Americans. So if we can do some of the things that Steph spoke about, getting some of the payment models aligned, so you can get things supported financially so they become the norm rather than having to climb uphill all the time, it improves the system. I'll give you one concrete example that you might not have thought about in the context of MAHA, but last week we put our rule out because we have to make rules about how physicians get paid. And in that rule, we decided that people like me who are heart surgeons maybe shouldn't get paid quite as much because our practice had gotten a lot more efficient. I have better help. I have machines and devices that can work especially impactfully to allow me to do my operations. And so maybe I should get paid 2.5% less and do that to all the specialists and then take that money and give it to the primary care doctors because we don't have enough of them. And when you graduate from medical school, and my son just did that last year, I don't know if he had any kids in his medical school class who were becoming general practitioners. I didn't know any. They all want to be specialists. And that's because they can get paid enough to pay their debts back. And if we can affect the salaries of general practitioners, you'll have more of them. And the best part about this is when you have more practitioners, you'll have more access to care. So if you happen to have a weight problem, then someone's there to be able to give you medical support to lose the weight. Or even if it's just coaching you through the process or giving you advice or a pat in the back, addressing a problem you have, like you have knee pain, you can't exercise, you're putting weight on. They can address the knee pain. All that becomes part of the holistic approach to wellness. And for Secretary Kennedy, it's mission critical that the movement identifies him as the captain of the ship on these issues. Because if we only grade what MAHA does based on food, and Brooke Rollins has been very supportive, she's involved and is a big ally, but we can't just put it on one issue. We need to broaden the arena and allow additional ways that the Secretary in particular helps his mission achieve its goals to be heard widely. So with that, Tony, thanks for having me on. Enjoy the rest of the great speakers on this the program.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on and making those great points. That if people can't afford to be healthy, they're not going to be healthy. That's a critical point. Speaker after speaker saying it, but it really is a critical part of all this. Our next speaker needs little preface. He is Jeffrey Zakarian. He's a superstar chef, beloved Iron Chef, best-selling author, and one of the Food Network's most trusted faces. Today, he brings his signature wellness-driven cuisine to Tampa General Hospital as its culinary chief. Please welcome Jeffrey Zakarian.
Hi, thank you, everybody. And excuse me, I'm using my wife's computer, so that's why the crayon says Margaret. I didn't dare change it because I probably couldn't change it back. But thank you, everybody, and thank you, Dr. Oz, for inviting me on this incredible call. As you said, I'm a chef, and I'm 2.5 years ago, I started on my own a drive to change the food at Tampa General Hospital, which is a $4 billion non-for-profit private enterprise. And I live in Tampa. And John Couros, the CEO, said, give me a proposal. So I tentatively named the proposal Farm to Gurney, and it stuck. So what I've done is I've changed 100% of the food, and we launched 2 weeks ago. Changed 100% of the food there to be restorative, all original food, no seed oils, no high fructose sugar, no maltodextrin, no hormones in any of the food, all grass-fed, grain-fed, organic eggs, everything. So now that hospital is serving 100% of the food that I serve in my restaurants and I serve to my family. It's been a crazy ride for them. Tampa General is an amazing place. It's a 700-room hospital, and they're the largest teaching hospital in Florida. And really what's profoundly different is the excitement that I've gotten, not from the patients, and obviously you don't want to go there, and if you have to, you'll get good food now, but from the staff. Now I have nurses, practitioners, nutritionists actually being able to practice nutrition properly. So we've really changed the paradigm. And what I've done is very similar to what Hilly's trying to do is I put a firewall at the back door of Tampa General Hospital, and nothing can get into that hospital refrigerator unless I approve it, and a whole list of raft of things that have to meet the criteria. So at worst case, if they mess up a recipe of mine, it'll be nutritious, single origin, no maltodextrin, no MSG, and everything is no seed oil. So we use ghee, We use, which is clarified butter. We use avocado oil, algae oil, extra virgin olive oil, and that's all we do in cooking. So it's really been an incredible journey. Dr. Oz heard about this, and he asked me to quickly, rapidly expand it throughout the country, and I didn't know how to do that, so he pointed me in the direction of JACO, which is the Joint Commission led by Jonathan Perlin. And so I met with Dr. Perlin a couple of times, and we're now coming up with a criteria called CHEF, Certified Healthy Eating Food, that is going to be hopefully one of the criteria when you get certified as a doctor and as a hospital in one of the 6,000 hospitals in the United States. You will get the certification. If you want chef, it's another level to show that you're actually providing a firewall of all the food in this facility, and all the cooking in this facility is done with the following ingredients. It's been very successful, and I hope we can roll it out to 6,000 or more hospitals in the United States and throughout the world. So this is the first one that we've done it, and I'm very excited about the future. In addition to that, quickly going to just finish up by mirroring what Hillary said. I'm forming something called a Chef Senate, which is all the chefs in the country. I'm going to anoint 2 chefs per state with a commission and a nutritionist and a doctor for that state. And those 2 chefs are going to curate and make all the food for all K through 12 in the entire country. And so each of these 2 chefs are going to be responsible for their state, and everything is going to flow through them. And so again, the firewall is the inventory. The firewall is what comes into the school. And so we're not going to allow that. The goal is to not allow that to happen ever again, where what you're eating in school is very much like the Japanese model with this 1% obesity in kids, because they cook for the kids K through 12 at least 1 meal a day. And with that, I want to thank everybody for allowing me on this call. I'm very excited about the future, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. So, let's just recap. Better food in schools, better food in hospitals, cheaper drugs, better science that gets to the root causes, maximum dialogue and debate. So, there couldn't have been a better example of real dialogue between people who have very different points of view than at the MAHA Summit that was brainstormed by Finn Kennedy and Alex Hardy. It was just a great gathering of people with all kinds of different perspectives. So take a look at this clip.
Sometimes there's this attack where people say, well, this or that conclusion is not supported by the science, or this or that conclusion is a conspiracy theory. And science, as practiced in its best form, is that if you disagree with it, then you ought to criticize it, and you ought to argue it against it, but you can't shut down the debate. And that really is, if you look at all of the big public health debates that we've had in this country over the last 20 or 30 years, it doesn't bother me that they disagreed with something that I believed or disagreed with something you believed or any of you. It's that they tried to silence the people who were saying things that were outside the Overton window. And as we found out the hard way over the last few years, it was very often the people who were outside the Overton window who were actually right, and all the experts were wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really, really great gathering. So next up, we have one of the people who was featured in that gathering, in that MAHA Summit, and that is Gary Brecka. He's known as the ultimate human. He's earned this title through his dedication to sharing real science, health principles. He's visited, and I've said this now many times, but he's visited 18 countries in 14 days, traveling around the world with 200 million views each month now, helping people to optimize their well-being, their potential, their longevity. He's a real champion of MAHA principles, fighting for real accountability from the corruption of big pharma, big food, big ag, and, making sure that these companies become responsible for the toxins that they put into our bodies through food, through drugs, through vaccines, through pesticides. So he's a real champion. Welcome, Gary Brecka.
Hey, thank you so much, Tony. It was such an honor to be a part of that MAHA Action movement. And as you mentioned, I've been touring the world on a crazy solo tour lately, and there's so much interest from the rest of the world in what is going on at MAHA. Like, what is this movement all about? Has Bobby Kennedy lost his mind? Has this movement lost his mind? Or does this have real teeth? And is this really moving the needle? And I've done a lot of stage talks, podcasts, lectures, interviews, and I got asked a really interesting question the other day when I was on the stage. I had to really pause and think about it. And one of the audience members said, if you were to put the top 50 anti-aging, longevity, biooptimization experts, whatever you want to call them, the MDs, the PhDs, the people that are really moving the needle in a room, and you were to ask them to agree on just one theory of aging, just a single theory of aging, what would that be? And I really had to think. I thought, wow, that's a really thought-provoking question. And I said, I think we would all agree on the theory of immunofatigue. And the theory of immunofatigue is a slow, progressive overwhelming of the immune system. We have a saying in medicine that the dosage determines the poison. I think we've learned that that's not true in human beings. The cumulative dosage determines the poisoning. And, for the last 11 years, my wife and I ran a very large functional medicine clinic. We had more than 250,000 patients come through that clinic. And a lot of the frontline defense that we used were dietary and lifestyle changes that were based on the big data, based on blue zone studies. We know that we can't substitute sleep. We can't substitute mobility. We can't substitute the absence of processed foods in the presence of whole foods. There wasn't a lot of data for dogmatic dieting, carnivore, keto, paleo, pescatarian, vegan, vegetarian, where the data pointed to was the absence of processed food and the presence of whole food. It allows our GLP-1 to respond to normal nutrient density that feeds our cellular biology. About 10 years ago, our clinical team began using on a regular basis folinic acid as a frontline defense for cerebrofolate deficiency. And we saw dramatic improvements in neurodevelopmental delays, autistic features, seizure activity, and tons of our patients experienced these dramatic improvements in their lives. And I described the MAHA movement to the rest of the world as kind of a back to the basics movement. It's like sometimes the pendulum swings so far that we have to come back full circle and take a reality check and say, maybe our great-great-grandmother and grandfather knew what they were doing. They pickled vegetables, they got sunlight, they slept with the cycle of the earth. They woke with the sun and they stopped eating when the sun set. And so I really talk about some of the seemingly minor movements, the removal of black box warnings, the increasing access to healthcare, the new dietary guidelines, and the recent approval of folinic acid, which is simply a nutrient that helps our methylation pathways operate properly and restores normal cellular biology. It's the longevity is not found in these crazy modalities. I'm a huge fan of red light, hyperbaric chambers, pulse electromagnetic field. But the truth is, longevity is found in getting back to what God gave us and further away from what man makes us. And I truly believe that that's what this movement is about. And a lot of these seemingly small wins are stacking up to be massive wins for people's cellular biology. I'm also a partner in a venture called Regenerative, and it's a program that we're rolling out all across the country in assisted care livings and memory care facilities to do simple things in these populations of our elderly, the often forgotten populations, where we restore farm-to-table foods. We make daily sunlight non-negotiable, mobility non-negotiable. We get them back into gardening. We bathe them in red light therapy, sometimes hydrogen nanogas, and the results are absolutely astounding. In many cases, loved ones are actually getting their parents back. In fact, it's been so successful that the children of a lot of these residents are coming in and saying, "Hey, can we come and be a part of this program?" And so my message is just simple today. I was asked to speak on how being healthy can be affordable, and those are all the ways that can be affordable. I commend all of the seemingly little wins in MAHA, the restoration of our dietary guidelines, the accessibility and affordability for healthcare, doing things like removing black box warnings and putting nutrients in the front lines of treating chronic disease. So my message is just simple today. This is a phenomenal back to the basics movement. I'm absolutely blessed to be a part of it, and I appreciate you giving me some time today, Tony.
Thanks so much, Gary. And it's a great message. That we've got to go back to basics. But we also need to use the best science and the latest science that we have And, whether it's red light or more sunlight or more outdoor time, any of those things. And, it can cost a fortune if you're unhealthy. So we want to do everything we can to make it possible for people to lead healthier lives, make it cheaper to lead a healthier life, but also tell the message that, things like the greatest cause of bankruptcy in this country is health bills that people can't pay. So we need to solve this problem. We need people to become healthy. We need to make it easy to be healthy. Next up, we have Bobby Kennedy III. He's the author of this incredible new book called Confessions of Anthony Fauci. It's really, really funny, but it's a serious book. It's well researched and, well thought through. And I think it's really a must read for everybody in the MAHA movement. He's a very, very smart man. You probably haven't heard of him. You haven't met him, but this is a book that really shows you who he is. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Tony. Can you hear me? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as Tony said in that kind intro, I've got my new book out, Confessions of Anthony Fauci. Basically, I would say what I tried to do is put words into his mouth, give him the confession that we all wish he would make. I suppose the concept of the book is kind of based on the fact that maybe or maybe not his pardon, because it was signed with an auto pen, was fake. And so in order to save his own ass, he rolls over and kind of spills the beans on the entire process behind the lab leak and the vaccination, Event 201, kind of goes into the whole 2 years of his life and a little bit of a retrospective back to the AZT stuff as well. But I tried to make it light, funny, very readable. The audiobook I did in his voice, so people are kind of enjoying that. And I'm out here looking for support. Anybody listening to this call that would like to, bring me on a show or, just interact with me on X. My X is at Bobby Kennedy X, and I'm very responsive to that. The book came out yesterday. We're throwing our book launch party in DC tonight, and really trying to make that push to, kind of get the word out. I think it's an excellent Christmas gift for your liberal friends, your conservative friends, your independent friends, pretty much anybody. Get them one, get them two. When you're finished reading the book, the entire audiobook itself only lasts about 3 hours. So despite being 300 pages, it's a real page turner. My background was in screenwriting, and it kind of almost reads more like a movie script than a traditional book. So, it's kind of fast and loose and fun. I encourage everybody to, after they finish reading it, pass it on to a friend. I think there's something about using humor with facts that kind of burrow into people's memory a little better than, just kind of the endless fact parade. I mean, people are overwhelmed by this information ecosystem that we're living in. And kind of having a laugh about it is a good way to deprogram them in a way. So I just, anybody that can help me get the word out about this book, look me up and get in touch with me through Tony or through X there. And I'd love to work with y'all. So have a great one.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bobby. Yeah, I mean, Dr. Fauci, failed his way to the top. He spent trillions of dollars while people got sicker and sicker and sicker. This is great reading, and this is the dawn of a new era where we're trying to make it possible to make people healthy, spend less money doing it, and have much, much better health outcomes. The next person up is Kelly Ryerson. I'm a big fan of Kelly's. She's a passionate activist working with policymakers to address critical public health questions that are connected to pesticide, all the harms that can be caused by pesticides. She's working to prevent liability shields, which are really, ways to incentivize bad actors. And that's what we want to stop. We want to incentivize people to deliver better care, better products, things that are safer, things that don't harm the American public. So she's a champion for radical transparency. She's, right on board with Bobby Kennedy's vision, and we're so happy to have you here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Tony. And thank you to all the presenters today. You're motivating me. I love it. And I have to give a shout out to Bobby. I read his book and it was so good because it's hard to laugh about these things. He makes you laugh. So it's awesome. And so first of all, before I talk a little bit about chemicals, as I usually do, I wanted to alert people to the fact that the FCC is trying to pass a rule that will take away local and state rights around where cell towers can be placed. This is personal to me. There's a cell tower that was going to go right next to my children's bedroom. And our city fought it. We got these 200-foot setbacks so that towers have to go away from the house so you don't, radiate your children. And now the FCC is pushing back and trying to do a federal preemption where they're going to get to decide where and when these towers go in. So there is a petition to sign. It's actually in my bio on my Instagram, Glyphosate Girl, if you wanted to check that out. Mostly I am working indeed on pesticides and food systems. And if you guys know me as Glyphosate Girl, you know that I've been an activist and an educator and fighting against these toxins that are in our food supply that are very, very directly connected with this explosion of chronic disease. And when I realized, what I realized when I took a step back is that I'm fighting so hard and trying to push this. And once again, we have an EPA that's not cooperating. I mean, it's nothing new. This is how it always is. So I realized if we want real lasting transformation, we can't only fight what's harmful, but we also have to build the better system that's going to replace it. And that means working directly with farmers. And when you spend time with farmers and you listen to their challenges and their risks and their hopes, you realize that they're operating in this system that entirely traps them economically and limits their choices. But many of them want this path out that's going to be more profitable, more resilient, and healthier for their families and their land. And that path is regenerative agriculture. Regeneration shows that there is this other way to reduce dependency on chemicals. And so what I did is I actually co-founded with Ryland Engelhart, formerly of Kiss the Ground, and Rick Clark, who's going to be speaking next. And we formed an organization called American Regeneration. We are dedicated to accelerating the nationwide shift to regenerative agriculture. We've built this world-class advisory team of regenerative practitioners, and we've been putting together events to bring farmers and scientists and leaders all together to understand regeneration. We've been amplifying stories through media. We're excited to announce we have a new MAHA cut of the film Common Ground that's available now. And it's less than an hour. It's 45 minutes, really focused on the farming solutions. The longer version's available on Amazon Prime. We've been distributing this shorter version to all the ag staffers because we know that if they can understand regeneration, they'll see there's an exit ramp off of conventional agriculture. We've been engaging with industry and policymakers. We are meeting with the members of the Ag House and Senate Ag Commission and explaining to them regeneration and subsidizing that. And so we are just really hoping to keep regenerative agriculture a high priority in the MAHA movement so we can be getting that healthy food to Hillary and to Jeffrey so that we can get it to the people. And so this brings me to today's guest, who I'm so honored to introduce. I'm thrilled to introduce him. He is farmer Rick Clark. He is a 7,000-acre regenerative row crop farmer from Indiana. He's regenerative certified. He's more profitable than many of the conventional neighbors that are farmers. He's no longer dependent on subsidies. And he's a living example of what successful large-scale regeneration looks like. He's also featured in our documentary Common Ground, which I highly recommend you checking out. I mentioned that shorter version, the longer version on Amazon Prime. Rick's work shows us that regenerative agriculture isn't just good for the soil, it's good for farm economics, community resilience, and the long-term viability of our entire food system. So thank you to everyone for being a part of the movement from soil all the way to table. And with that, I am honored to introduce Rick Clark.
Wow. Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that. Man, what a group of superstars here. I am absolutely honored to be part of this today. Thank you so much. I want to start with a statistic that should just set everybody back in their chair. Do you realize that currently we're losing 63 farms every single day in the United States? That is atrocious, and we need to figure out how to stop that. So thank you for giving us the chance to speak for a few minutes here today on this. This is an extremely important topic. I'm thrilled that you have a farmer on this today, and I hope you have farmers from here forward. we have been on this regenerative journey now for about 17 years. I didn't know it was called regenerative when we started, but what it all boils down to, it's all about building soil health and building human health. We're not only trying to build human health from creating higher density food that all the wonderful chefs can use, but we're also talking about human health of protecting the farmer from the caustic pesticides that they have been told that they have to use to be able to farm. I mean, some of these labels have a skull and crossbones on them, and folks, that's death. And we are expected to work in those conditions. And I said, no, we're not doing this anymore. And we have gone down a road of organic. We're certified organic in all of our acres. We're certified Regenerative. We deeply care about everything we do. Are we going to break the yield contest? No, not even close. But folks, this isn't about yield. And unfortunately, a farmer's success is always geared around how much did you yield? That's the only way they seem to want to look at success. That's the wrong way to look at success. We need to start looking at success as, are you becoming profitable? Is that acre that you're on, is it profitable? Can you increase profitability? Can you reduce inputs? We now, as a farm, we are heading into year 12 of no synthetic inputs, no fertilizers, no chemicals, no pesticides, no herbicides, none of those things that are killing not only the microbes in the soil, but killing bees and also killing humans around us. We've eliminated all that stuff. So we have to understand that there are other ways to farm. So we have to continue to let the farmer talk and say, look, we can do this. This isn't just a pipe dream. And there were a couple things I've heard that really struck with me. I want to go to these right now. Jeffrey mentioned the 2 chefs per state notion. I love that. I have the same notion for regionalizing the United States, creating regions, and you have an ambassador leader for each region that will implement and train the principles of soil health to adjust for the context of where that farm is located in the United States. You're going to farm entirely different in New Mexico than you're going to farm in Iowa. We have to understand that, and we have to have leaders in those regions that know how to teach those rules and systems in that context. And Dr. Oz mentioned epigenetics. And we have been on a crusade of epigenetics for 5 years now. We now have our own soybean line that we legally use through epigenetics to obtain. So we don't buy any more seed from any of the big companies. We can legally do this through epigenetics, and we are finding that these the genetics that want to work within your context rise to the top, and they express themselves, and those are the ones you're going to continue to use. Now, I would like to close this out with some calls of action. We need to look at teaching the teachers, and a good way to do this is through a company called Regenerative. They are already a USDA-based solution. They are approved. They've got feet on the ground, and they are training and teaching the farmers how to implement these regenerative practices. We need to elevate the regenerative voices. Just like you're letting me talk today, we need to continue to let more of these voices come to this platform and make the world know that we can change the way we're farming and we can be profitable. It's not just smoke and mirrors. This is real. Thank you so much for allowing me to come and speak to this beautiful movement. Thank you.
Yeah, Rick, thanks so much for coming on. And that last point is just a great point, because it's so much at the core of what the MAHA movement is, to have as many different voices as we can possibly have, that there's not just one way to do anything. We don't want to substitute one kind of settled science for a new kind of settled science. We want every perspective, and there are better ways to do things, and there are safer ways to do things, and there are ways to have vegetables and fruits and all kinds of foods in this country that don't have harmful, dangerous pesticides on them. So we need to find those things, and that's a big part of what this movement is really all about. So we were going to have Russell Brand on next, but he is with his children and needs to do what all of us need to do, which is take care of our families first. So, and we're so grateful for all the times that he has come on, and and the fact that he's been such a good man, such a MAHA man, and he's really helped this movement and has used his platform of 22 million people to spread the MAHA message that we can have healthier people in this country. We can make it more affordable to have healthy people. So we're very grateful to him. And before we close out, there are just a couple of calls to action. First of all, just thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for coming on. We are going to try hard to make this shorter. So we're going to try to make it 45 minutes, get it on a lot of platforms so we can get just a broader and broader distribution. So we'd like you all to really stay informed with what's going on. And the first thing that we'd like you to do is go to our website, mahaaction.com, and watch the MAHA Summit. And then also go to YouTube. That's probably the easiest place to watch it. Watch the whole thing. We had just such incredible people on. It's a 9-hour panel, system of 8 or 9 panels, but so many important voices, so many people disagreeing with each other, and such a tribute to real science, because that's what science is. People getting on, disagreeing with each other, getting their ideas out there so we can have better outcomes, better health outcomes for everybody in this country. The other couple of things that we'd like you to do is read the MAHA report. Read it every week, every day. We have great stories coming out. We're going to get better and better people. And, that's something, it's a way to really follow us closely every day. And then, keep posting, keep commenting, keep sharing. Join into this conversation, the MAHA conversation. Everybody in America wants their children to be healthier. And, so take part in that movement, spread the word, and, come on every week to this show. And we will have a show next week. It's going to be shorter, next Wednesday, 4 p.m. Have a great week. Look forward to seeing you all next week.
America's children are sick, and moms have been betrayed. The time for empty promises, long past. Now is a time for action. MAHA is the most powerful force of collective action in generations. The grassroots power of moms and activists has created an army of health warriors with more reach than all mainstream media combined. Together, we can end the chronic disease epidemic. MAHA's influence is reaching millions. It's reaching Congress. And that energy, these chain reactions, are working.
How about Operation Stork Speed?
Dozens of food companies removing toxic ingredients.
I plan to lead by example.
MAHA is now.
We're talking about how to change the culture.
The American people want America healthy again.
It is a renaissance moment in health in America.
For health, freedom, and the truth. Join us at MAHA Action.